What's up, everyone? My name is Brandon Boyd, and you're watching Heavy Consequence.
I know you guys released a new EP in 2020, but it has been nearly 5 years since the last full-length album. I just wanted to see if anything you can tell us as far as wheels turning on new music for the band.
It's wild that it has almost been 5 years since we put a record out. That's so crazy. Yeah, well, we're always talking about making new music together, and it's really fun and wonderfully challenging to write music with the guys in the band. And I have no doubt that once we just get into our band room and we start just playing, that new music is going to emerge. That's usually how it happens. We usually get together at this phase of our lives, I suppose. When we get together to rehearse for some upcoming shows, we're swiftly reminded how much fun it is to be in a band and to make new music. And I have to say that it's really a wonderful place to be able to write music together as it sort of naturally occurs. We've done the thing where we went like albums back to back to back to back, and that was amazing. And we probably put out some of our best work during that period of time, because it's a lot like it's like exercising a muscle. So we'll probably lumber through our first few tracks, and then no one will ever hear them, and then we might come up with something good again. I have high hopes. So yeah, we'll see.
And I wanted to ask us, Incubus emerged in the late 90s and early 2000s. It kind of got grouped in with a lot of the hard rock bands of the time, Papa Roach and Stained and Linkin Park and Godsmack. But I always found Incubus to be very different from those bands. Sure, a lot of your big singles like Pardon Me and Stellar had very heavy choruses, but there was definitely a distinct sound. Did you find it odd when you kind of broke through that Incubus was kind of lumped in with those bands and toured with those bands? And I just wanted to get your feelings when that started to happen as part of that kind of whole scene.
Right. It's a good question. It's a little bit complex because it's hard to, from my point of view, I'm a little too close to it to be able to make sense of it completely. And so it's sometimes better for me to defer to a more objective observer. If you ask me personally, it was amazing to be able to play shows and tour with so many of the bands that you mentioned, and so many of them were so good at what they were doing, and they were, forging into new territory, and it was creating its own little scene, or not little, it was a big scene essentially. But I always felt like I was kind of on the outskirts of it looking in, and I felt extremely grateful, and I feel extremely grateful to have been able to, like I said, play alongside so many of these artists. But I never myself fully identified with the genres that we were being lumped in with. And it bothered me for a while. It did, truth be told. But as I've gotten older, I've come to understand that it's very rare that artists get to choose the genres that they get lumped in with. It's just a human thing to try and put things into categories. It helps us understand a little bit better the whys and the whats, the ifs and the whens. Somebody said once, people they put their milk on a particular rack in the fridge. It's like, there it is, that's milk. Here's cheese. Here's here's the meat, whatever. And so that's where we just got. It's like the music does have some of the same trappings. We're a rock band for all intents and purposes. We dressed the part. We showed up to the same gigs, so it makes perfect sense. But when you really look at it more granularly and went through it with a fine-tooth comb, it's like there are things that deeply differentiate us from those groups of bands. And I think that's good. You know what I mean? Just like those bands were differentiated from us. So it really I'm not trying to argue that one thing is better than the other, but to answer your question, it was a little bit hard for me to identify completely with that period
Yeah.
of time.
Well, the amazing thing is 20 years later, the staying power of these bands, you guys and all those bands I mentioned, if you look at the headliners of every major rock festival, it looks like the same headliners from 2000, 2001. So it's incredible how long that,
Yeah,
you know, that these bands have dominated the hard rock, you know, space, which amazes me. Yeah.
it is really true. I mean, there's lots of factors that lead into that, and I mean, I'm sure not the least of which is that this era of bands that we're talking about, and you know, Incubus is definitely included in it. It was like the last wave of rock bands before we became a sort of exclusively digital economy and an attention economy. So this is a period of time when it was the last gasp of a more analog time, where people would go to rock concerts en masse, you know, and people were actually buying physical products en masse. And that's not how it is anymore. And so there's a lot of people who are like my age, probably your age, and in varying degrees thereof, who to them, that's what music is. You know what I mean? And there's not like it's a small amount of people. It's like, it's actually millions of people around the world who are so like, man, I miss rock concerts. Man, I miss, you know, like that kind of this, it's a more visceral experience. It's less digitally altered, you know?